Well, the game plan does, clearly, because of our scoring capacity in a range of games this year. And the most immediate one would be the Essendon game in the first half in particular, where we, I think, 36 points up at half time. So clearly our game plan allows that to happen. But having said that, from a consistency point of view, no, we want higher scores on a more consistent basis. So that's certainly something we're working on. The direct answer to that is no. Certainly not an overload of instructions. We try and keep it as minimal amount of information as possible, particularly going into game day. And players always have the capacity to exhibit. I think what you mean by flair is, to make their own decision, to take a spectacular mark, to run and carry the ball, the Patrick Dangerfield movement early in the year. So that's certainly always available to players. Well, I think building is you're always trying to improve. So you're building a squad, you're building a team, you're building a football club. Without trying to be too pedantic about the definition, rebuilding would be that you really bottom out, you clean everything out, and you start again. Probably spend 3 or 4 years on the bottom of the table, trying to get the best draft picks in that 3 or 4 year period. We're certainly not in that category, but we've got a really a good squad of young players with some nice sprinklings of mature players, and we need to build that squad to a level that our fans would expect and want. No, we prepared. We knew that was going to happen. All those decisions were made with the absolutely correct intent by the players in the football club. And within another 12 months, we would have covered their departures. No, look, I think the conditions there dictate that you're not going to handball in those conditions as much. And it was really just a matter of getting the ball forward. And if you looked at both sides, they played that typical wet weather style of football. That won't hold up in dry conditions. Okay, that certainly won't hold up in dry conditions. So that was really based on the conditions. Well, the thing, if you watch most games now, and the game coming up against St Kilda, if you get some vision, if the television's showing you vision from behind the goals at any stage, you'll see that St Kilda will have nearly all their players in behind centre, up into their defence. So it's very much the way football's going from a defensive point of view. What would cause frustration to the supporters would be if when you move the ball out, the forwards and the midfielders can't get back into your forward line quick enough. And there's other situations where you need to take forwards out of that area for a variety of reasons, put around a stoppage to try and stop a run on the goals, and the opposition will have 1 or 2 loose defenders there, and so you got to give something to get something. So that's pretty much the way the game is. The forward line players no longer just stay in your forward 50. Okay, they need to migrate up the field to provide a defensive action. And then when there is a turnover with the ball, they've got to be able to, ideally, get back into the forward line. Sometimes that's just, that doesn't happen, and that's why you see loose defenders. As Essendon would have seen in the first quarter against us out here. Well, certainly the go-home factor is significant. And I think young guys who are putting themselves in the draft really need to think very seriously about, are they prepared to go anywhere in Australia? And they'll all tell you yes, but to be prepared to stay there. So there needs to be some responsibility shown from the guys putting their hand up to be drafted to start with. In terms of picking guys, ideally we like to pick South Australians, but not at the expense of playing ability. So we'll certainly, if there's not much difference between two particular players, one's a South Australian, we'll certainly go with the South Australian, but not if there's a significant difference in what we would assess as playing ability. There's a place for both. A lot of your scoring opportunities now originate from forward of centre because of a press situation, but you've still got to be able to transfer the ball if it gets back to your half-back line. Certainly the press is in mode. We do that. We do it very well. Defensively, we're ranked probably second or third in the competition with the way we go about that. Our capacity to transfer the ball from half-back is ranked third or fourth in the competition. What we've got to tidy up on is our ability to turn that transfer into scoring ability. Leading teams is still very much in vogue in our football club. It's been here since I started in 2005. It's an outstanding program, so that's very much full bore in terms of our leadership program. I think it's a good observation. I think our tackling throughout the year has been poor. Our last 3 weeks have been much better, both in terms of the number of tackles that we lay. We sit about midway in the competition in the last 3 weeks on that. But certainly our execution, our technique of the tackling is something which has been substandard throughout the year. Oh no, I mean there's no doubt there's players in the competition who are exceptional kicks. We have some of those. Scott Thompson's an exceptional kick, so we've got some players who are up to standard. You're always looking to continually improve the kicking standard though, because kicking is such a great part of our game, becoming more and more important. I would suggest so in our last couple of weeks in particular, and hopefully for the end of the season that you'll see a lift in our kicking skills. I know the setup's pretty much remained the same. I think that group of players working together, they form a relationship, they start to understand each other. Sam Jacobs has had continuity this year and been our #1 ruckman. We've had a lot of new players go through the midfield. You know, Sloan, David McKay played in there last week as a genuine midfielder. Brodie Smith's had some time in there. Ian Cullinan when he was playing for a couple of games. So we've had a lot of new players go through there, so it's just taken a bit of time to gel. Yeah, of course. I mean, in general, most sides, and we would be included in this, is probably at some stage in the third quarter, maybe towards the end of the third quarter, the sub gets activated. What was it, our game against Sydney, I think. I activated the sub at halftime. The sub we've activated maybe twice this year at half-time. The rest of the time we've been dictated pretty much by injury. I'm just spending some time out in the outer talking to the supporters. Just mingling with the supporters. I mean, I watch a bit of the warm-up, but I'm only there for about 10 minutes, so it's more just to sit with the supporters. No, I think midfielders who've got a great capacity to run and to predict the ball offensively, the type of midfielders that we need. We've got enough in midfielders who can play what would be termed in football inside. Thompson, Sloan, Douglas, Dangerfield type players. We need some more David McKay type players. So that'll be the ones that we'll try and target if they're available when it's our pick. Well, the Coaches Association provide funding for senior coaches and assistant coaches to do an additional study if they wish to go on fact-finding tours. So they provide finance for professional development. So that's one really big positive of the Coaches Association in the last couple of years is in the development of all coaches, not only senior coaches but assistant coaches. I mean, depending on the finance that's available. Last year I went overseas with an overseas trip with the Australian Institute of Sport, where we visited a range of different sporting organisations. I know some of our assistant coaches, there's conferences put on each year through, particularly in the off season. Football conferences which are able to attend and exchange ideas and pick up new ideas there. If they wish to do a course of study, and it might be some sort of management course, it might be conflict resolution type course, or any of those sort of topics which are applicable to coaching, they're all available, and our coaches are involved in those. Our players understand that it's a special game for the state, so we don't talk about it on a continual basis, but it is a great. Those two games throughout the year are great games for our state, and the one coming up is our home game. So let's get a full house. You have every club has a particular style of play, and some of them are similar. What you do find though is if there's some tinkering you can do to that, but for any supporters to expect a whole new style of play to come out after half time or quarter time, you're just not going to see it. Now, what you might find is teams put more players around the stoppage, or they play an extra loose guy in defence. If that's what they mean by Plan B, that happens with all teams. But to expect a side to come out after quarter time or half time or three-quarter time and play a completely different style of football, I'm sorry, it doesn't happen. Yeah, I would think what people would expect is that run of goals is stopped, and the West Coast kicked 9 in a row against Geelong a couple of weeks ago. Essendon kicked 10 against Richmond a couple of weeks ago. So it happens. It's happening, and in particular this year, it's happening more and more. And every team would try and stop that from happening, but it's a very difficult exercise to stop. So it's not just something that we've been through as a football club. It's how can West Coast kick 9 goals in a row against Geelong? The most successful team in the last 4 or 5 years, and Geelong not being able to stop it. So there's an example. I'm not trying to dilute, a reason, but it happens. It's a tough phenomenon. I'm sure Chris Scott didn't sit there and let it go, and I'm sure Damien Hardwick just didn't sit there and watch it unfold. And we're no different. But it's a very difficult situation to try and stop. Oh yeah, of course I have. But I feel for the fans because we're up until the last year or so we've been used to a degree of success. So I understand their frustration, but I'd ask them to continue to support our playing group because they're going to be good. They're going to be very good. So there'll be some good times ahead of them.